Thanks.
And we're on.
Give it just a couple more seconds. Once it hits 6 on my watch. All right. I'm going to call to order this meeting of the Plain Township Board of Trustees for Tuesday, April 14th, 2020. If everybody will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, I've got a flag here for us.
I like it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which
for
it
which
stands,
stands one
one
nation,
nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice
for all. Okay. Before us, we have our agenda as presented. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections by fellow board members or department heads at this time?
Yes, Mr. President, under new business, I would like to add weekly meetings.
Okay. And then, let's see here. Does anybody else have anything to add?
Nothing from me.
Okay. Already got concerns of trustees, so I've got one other item that I'm add underneath that, Stark County Township Association. That being said, if there's no other changes to the agenda, it will stand as amended. The first item we have, I'm going to turn over to our fiscal officer, Mr. Wolf, regarding swearing in documents.
Thank you. I was presenting my oath of office for the board. I was sworn in by Trustee Hawes on March 29th, 2020. So just presenting the official document.
Okay, perfect. Congratulations.
Thank
Looking
you.
forward to another 4 years.
You too.
Okay.
Good job, Tom. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Thanks.
Moving on, it'll take us to the sheriff's report. And are we fortunate enough to have Lieutenant Carver on the line with us here this evening?
He just.
No, we do not.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Hold on one second here. I think I have him coming in right here.
Okay.
All right, go ahead. He's available now.
Hey, Ryan, this is Scott. Up the monthly report for the sheriff's office. Anything specific we need to touch upon? I know a lot of the numbers you us ahead of time show some increases in activity. Ryan, are you able to hear me, or are you possibly on mute?
I'm seeing him on the call. Can we move back to him? Let me see if I can get him on.
Okay.
He's not showing muted, but I'm not seeing a mic for him.
Okay. Well, I think just for the sake of speaking to it, I mean, the activity actually seemed to be proportional based upon essentially the staying at home orders, everything from accidents, crashes, house or vacation checks and so forth was down across the board. Did anybody have anything else we need to draw upon for the sake of the public good?
I do not. I think you hit that right on the head with how the numbers were looking.
Okay. I do know too, earlier today, he had provided us with a copy of the annual report. So let's make sure we all take a look at that. I know traditionally the sheriff will present that at our meetings in person, but given the circumstances that we're dealing with now, I do think it's something that once we're back to a more normal state in our meeting space, that either Lieutenant Carver or the sheriff come out and we do a walkthrough on that. For the public's good who may be watching this, our overall call activity for 2019 was up, and it's a direct correlation to the bot being fully staffed and a more proactive policing approach. It pulled out highlights on the status of our fleet vehicles, which the board has worked extremely hard at over the last 5 to 6 years to get on a good rotation cycle. And the reason that's important is because our prior administrator in a board faction had bought a significant number of cruisers all at once. So unfortunately, they got old all at once, and based upon revenue, it takes some time to go through that. So right now, Lisa, am I correct in saying we're replacing it approximately 2, actually the last couple of years, even 3 and 4. So we've got a good replacement cycle from that aspect specific to the sheriff's report.
Yes. Yeah, thanks to the board's due diligence, we've been able to replace 2, sometimes 3 a year. So we're finally at a good spot with vehicles.
Perfect. Okay. We'll save the rest of the highlights for Lieutenant Carver or Sheriff Meyer to address it at a future date. Is there anybody on the phone from the general public that would happen to have anything that needs to be addressed with the sheriff's office? I'm assuming we don't have anybody from the public that opted to join us here this evening. So we'll proceed forward. There was nothing under unfinished business, but we do have Ms. Campbell, new business.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up the idea to the board about maybe doing, until things get back to normal, more of a weekly meeting. Tuesdays work, 6 o'clock. That way we could just get bills paid and have a lighter agenda each time to just make it flow a little easier during this time.
Honestly, I feel it's overkill myself. I mean, we've managed a two weeks for prolonged periods of time, and I mean, we've got technology tools in place to be able to do it. If we need to make sure these are simply done on site for the sake of signing documents and so forth immediately following, I mean, I see no issue with that. But I also, I mean, shorten it up and end up with a 5 to 10 minute meeting. Our meetings are typically an hour on average. Presents.
Yeah,
Lisa,
yeah,
are
I
we having
just
issues?
bringing it up.
Are
No,
we
I
having
was just
issues
bringing it
paying
up.
bills?
No,
Yeah.
I was just bringing it up as a point of discussion. If you guys are comfortable still working this way, that's absolutely fine. Again, we always have the option for a special meeting if need.
I think
Tom Wolf, do we see any problems at all? Does it, in your opinion, do you think we need to meet a little more frequent, or are things going pretty smooth right now from your standpoint?
Yeah, the feedback from my staff, it's been going pretty smooth. Joyce has been working mostly from home, and she comes in to print all the warrants. So I haven't heard of any issues from them.
Okay, because
Okay, and we only have Eric look at DocuSign, so that may be a solution for signing.
And Lisa, to that point, since I brought it up, when you say Eric, is that Eric Williams from our legal ability to use it? And
Nope,
or
Eric Haynes.
Okay. Eric Williams, would there be anything that comes to your mind that we would have to take into consideration from a legal aspect in using DocuSign? I know it's used in so many different venues anymore, and that's where when something got sent out this morning, I'm simply going, I know I've researched it before and it's been a while, so I'm not going to sit here and admit that I'm up to speed totally on it. But there's no reason, regardless of COVID-19 and the coronavirus, just as a general good business principle and practice, we really can't be doing this. It would help make things more efficient, quicker turnaround and so forth. It's my opinion. I mean, honestly, we're just going to need to take a look collectively as a team at how much documentation, may need to go through it, and what can go through DocuSign, what can't.
Yeah, I think that's what we need to look at. On a general principle, I don't have an issue with it, and it makes a lot of sense. Obviously, they use it to do $1 million real estate transactions, so I don't see why it would be a problem. I don't think I'd be able to use it to sign our resolutions, but that's not hard to do anyway. But in terms of documents for the three of you, for you all not having to be in the same place at the same time and to streamline things, I think it makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what comes to my mind on something like that is, each of us would have our own electronic signature set up. There's got to be some type of security parameter around it that way, whether it's John, Brooke, or myself, we're the only one that can actually administer it. So from a security aspect, I'm sure Eric will vent that out through research.
Yeah, so I think as long as we've got that locked down, I think it'd probably be a helpful tool.
Yeah.
Hey guys, I think I have Lieutenant Carver on the line.
Lieutenant Carver, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you now. A couple minutes joining in late, getting on.
No, it's all good. The joys of technology, we're still getting the public's business done. So if you don't mind just bearing with us for a minute, and I'll jump back to our the sheriff's report as soon as we finish this new business item. Just give. So John or Brooke or Tom, do you have any further comments or questions specific to the point of discussion that Lisa brought up?
No, I think, as long as we recognize that if we do have a pressing issue, that we, given enough time, get it advertised as a special meeting. So if it is something we have to go into executive session for, that we're able to do that. Otherwise, I'm okay keeping that schedule as long as we continue to see that business as usual for bills and, those pressing matters. Otherwise, I'm okay with it.
And honestly, I mean, from whether it's social distancing or anything, I can't force it. There would have to be a travesty of national proportions, that much greater than this, to probably disrupt it, but it's just my take.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had under new business.
Thank you.
So for the sake of the public good, we are going to step back to the sheriff's report. And Lieutenant Carver, I'm going to turn that over to you. We just had made a couple comments while we were trying to successfully make sure you were connected here. So I'm going to turn it over to you, see if there's any specific points you want to draw out for the sake of our meeting.
Nothing specific. I heard your comments, in regards to the annual report and some of the high points there. And we can delve into that in more depth. Just from the perspective of the monthly report, the numbers that we kind of expected to see, as far as some reductions in overall call volume, is there's less citizens out in the public, and as we're taking steps to reduce some of our exposure and cutting down on some of the proactive things that we normally would have done to limit our exposure. So those numbers are kind of on par with what we would have expected, but we're still getting steady call volume, and the guys are still busy out there.
Does anybody have any questions for Lieutenant Carver? Okay, perfect. Well, appreciate your time. Thanks, Lieutenant. Okay.
Yep, you're welcome.
Perfect. Going back to our agenda, the next item on the agenda is the fiscal officer's report, and I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Wolf.
Thank you. Fiscal Officer number 1 is a request for resolution to authorize payment of pending warrants an amount of $178,421.85.
I will so move.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Mrs. Harless,
Yes.
Mr. Sabo.
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 2 is a request for resolution to authorize payment of regular payroll in an amount not to exceed $250,000.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Mrs. Harless,
Yes.
Mr. Sabo.
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 3 is a request for resolution to authorize payment for the following medical claims.
And I will so move.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Mrs. Harless,
Yes.
Mr. Sabo.
Yes.
Fiscal Officer number 4 is the financial report for the month of March.
I think just for clarification, you said moving forward clearly with interest rates, changes and so forth, our portfolio is going to see a reduction in interest income in the months.
Correct.
Forward, but you've got that partially hedged with some long-term investments that have higher rates still for us.
Yeah, we were able to get into some long-term investments when the rates were higher. So our average yield's a little over 2%. Most of the short-term rates are around 0.25% to 0.4%. So yeah, anything short-term, we're definitely probably about a third of what it was last year at this time. So it's definitely going to have an impact on the interest income for 2020.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions regarding financial report? Okay. Feel free to see Tom afterwards if need be.
And that concludes the fiscal officer report.
Thank you, Tom. It's going to take us to our administrator, Mrs. Campbell.
Thank you. I will have two resolutions before the board this evening. The first is a resolution to submit the question of renewing the rate of our tax levy for the police services contract.
And Lisa, I'll make a motion to move on that.
I'll second it for discussion.
From a discussion aspect, essentially what the renewal does is it will continue to generate the same exact dollar amount, which means based upon property evaluations, essentially our effective millage rate would decline, correct?
Yes, especially because when at the last levy was a renewal and an addition. So that renewal that we've been renewing is has not been brought up to current tax rates in years. But this would see where we're at currently with just a renewal only from the auditor's office.
Okay. And I think for the sake of, I'm going to jump forward without us taking any, just for the sake of Brooks benefit still being new to the board, renewal versus replacement. So renewal, essentially, when we set a millage initially, it's going to generate X dollars. So as property values increase, essentially the effective millage, what may have started as say 5 mil because of property value increase, the effective millage, and this is just an arbitrary number, it's not calculated, the effective millage may be 4.2 or 3.9. So we're still generating that same X dollars. Whereas on a replacement levy, you take that 5 mil and apply it against the new property tax values. And essentially what that's going to translate into is a new dollar amount. Maybe slightly more. It could be more than a slight bit. So that being said, Lisa, is this for us to get the numbers from the auditor's office to clarify?
Yes, both of them.
A renewal and a
Just to-
replacement will generate.
Yep, it's the first step, just so Tom will certify both resolutions, and then I will send them to the auditor's office, and it takes about a week or two, and then they'll send us back the tax valuation and how it'll equal out.
And from there, once we have those numbers, that's what allows the board to determine which way we want to go, while also mirroring that up against some additional cost projections, you know, whether it's the cost per sheriff based upon current rates and projected future cost of living increases that may be associated with that, to, you know, replacement of cruisers and so on.
And what the point that you bring up is a good one, especially since they're in the midst of negotiating a contract, and we're heading into, you know, a levy cycle. So it's a little difficult, although I have, made projections. If the contract was already done, it'd be easier for us to see into the future, but I have made some projections for that. So I think once we get the figures back, the board will be able to make their decision.
Okay.
Lisa, do you remember the original date of that levy that we're looking at for either renewal or replacement?
I think it was even before I was here, John.
I think it was a
because
long time ago.
Yeah, it's at least over 14 years.
Yeah.
Because
Wow.
I've been here, the first time we were able to hire more deputies and get vehicles is this last levy with an increase. So I bet it's a good 16 years since it's been brought up to standard.
I was pretty sure it was pretty old.
Yeah.
You think about it, we're collecting the value of money equal to the evaluation of that particular year as we continue to renew.
Yeah.
Okay. So for the sake of discussion, is there anything else on administrator number 1, and that is regarding the renewal language? If there's no further discussion, roll call, please.
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Mr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Harless,
yes,
Thank you. Item number 2 is the same resolution except for a replacement of a tax levy for the purpose and payment of costs incurred to the police district.
I will so move.
Second.
Discussion would just echo the same comments that we had underneath the discussion regarding renewal. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Mr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Harless.
yes,
And that's the end of the administrator report.
Thank you. It's going to take us to the fire department. Chief Schallenberger.
Thank you. Item number 1 is our monthly report.
I love the sign, chief.
Well, that kind of puts this month together right now.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
That's the truth.
Anybody got any questions? Okay. Next.
Okay, thank you. Item number 2 is a resolution by the Plain Township Board of Trustees to promote Matthew Brown from part-time status to full-time firefighter paramedic class 1 effective April 19th, 2020 at 7 a.m., 700 hours, as he successfully completed his Ohio Police and Fire physical.
I will so move on fire number 2.
I'll second.
Discussion. Chuck, just for clarification, how long has he been working for us now, part-time? Approximately.
Almost a year.
Okay. And again, I mean, this is essentially the methodology that we went to a little over 2 years ago with having some of these part-timers where it allows us to really get a good feel for their skill and their fit. Essentially, has provided some great bench strength for us in backfilling, whether it's retirements or departures.
That is correct. That has helped us a lot. We were able to kind of see what they're like, and then also too, it speeds up the process once we want to hire them because they've already in our system.
Perfect. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Mrs. Harless,
Yes.
Mr. Sabo,
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Item number 3 is a resolution by the Plain Township Board of Trustees to authorize the approval and payment to Stryker Medical for the maintenance contract for Lucas machines, heart monitors, and AEDs and miscellaneous equipment per attached quote taken from Fund 28A08B.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Mrs. Harless,
Yes.
Mr. Sabo,
Yes.
Thank you. And item number 4 is a resolution by Plain Township Board of Trustees to authorize purchase and payment to Carrilla Fire Training Services for a passenger vehicle gas-fired prop and additional extrication element to be added to be located at the Plain Township Fire Training Building at 2855 Easton to be taken from funds 21A02C and 10A08.
So
I
moved.
will move on fire department number 4.
I'll second that. Discussion? Actually, Chuck, just for public sake, I know I've had a conversation with you on this and I've seen some of the graphics on it, but this will really help us in our ability to consistently train in an automotive type of fire environment, knowing that we cannot always have available to us old cruisers or old cars and so forth, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. This, it's hard to get, older cars donated anymore for extrication. This will have a prop for that, for doing cutting and door pops. And then also too, just to have simulated fire that we can get some realistic, evolutions for new cadets and then even experienced firefighters that we can do on a weekly or monthly basis.
And I think the important piece outside of the training opportunity, again, these have been budgeted funds that we have accrued over a period of time as part of that overall training complex.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Mrs. Harless,
Yes.
Mr. Sabo,
Yes.
And on my agenda, it has a thank you letter right after that. I'm not sure if that's under new business or it's under fire, but anyway, actually one of the gentlemen we just hired, Matt Brown, was in this thank you note that came in from a township resident that you can see in front of you there. So, and we have something under communications too, I think. So.
Oh, yeah, it's in the communications.
Is it the same letter?
Okay, it might be the same one. I'm not sure if I got a duplicate here or not.
Okay.
Okay, all right, thank you. That concludes fire department.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Chief. It's going to take us to the road department. Let's see here. As far as I know, Joe had already provided the monthly report.
And I can do his resolution.
Okay. So Lisa, do you want to start with number 2?
Yeah, I'll start with number 2. Yes. As it's a resolution to list the bids for the 2020 paving and road repair project, and they were received from Central Allied North Star Asphalt and Superior, and they are attached.
Okay.
And then road number 3 is a resolution to award the 2020 Plain Township paving and road repair project application to the lowest, most responsible bidder, which was North Star Asphalt.
And I will so move on road number 3.
I'll
Oh,
second.
we have to do 2 first. I think we have to do
Two
2.
There's nothing on there.
2 was just listing them. He just had them to list and attach, not as a resolution. I'm not sure why.
I thought we had, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. I thought we had to vote on that as well. But, okay, sorry.
Yeah, because it's over a certain amount, maybe?
Well, no, because, the certain amount would apply when we're
Correct.
awarded. But
Yeah, they're just
listing just
listed
spells-
to be part of the minutes for the record.
All right. Sorry. So
No, it's
Scott,
That's
we can
okay.
move on for 3 then.
Okay. We've got a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion on awarding of bids? I think the only thing I want to point out, I mean, we see this every year. It seems to be a rotation. There's only a handful of folks that are doing asphalt, and essentially we're talking anywhere between $300,000 to $400,000 difference between the low and the high bid here overall for the mileage. So again, with this year's bid, it's keeping us on track with what we've been doing the last couple of years, where we're essentially paving approximately 10% of our township roadways, which takes that cycle that we had at one point that was almost between 15 and 17 years and getting it back down to between 10 and 12 years. So thanks again to our township residents who have willingly and overwhelmingly supported the roads and allowing us to continue forward with this. So there's no further discussion on awarding bids for paving 3. Roll call.
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Mr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Harless,
Yes.
Thank
I
you.
do have
Item
a-
number 4 is
I do
Go
have a
ahead, Lisa.
question. If Joe is not on, should we have excused him at the beginning of the meeting like we do at Plain Township Hall?
Yeah, we'll do it right after number 4 here.
Okay, item number 4 is a resolution to enter into the contract with North Star Asphalt for the 2020 Plain Township paving and road repair project.
I will so move.
I will
second.
second.
I think I heard Brooke first, so we'll second Brooke. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Mr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Harless,
Yes.
And
Before,
that is the road repair.
okay, before we proceed, as Trustee Harless had indicated, Joe was previously excused prior to the meeting. So that's going to take us to the zoning department. I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Farrar.
Thank you, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
On the agenda is the monthly report.
Does anybody have any questions? I know we continue to see a robust amount of new home building over primarily in Wicker Creek, and we're going to start seeing the push with the fountains at Edgewood. I think it's important to note that the next phase of Saratoga Hills is being clear cut and cut in at this point. So I think even with the market how it is, I think we're going to continue to see a strong new housing build in the township.
That concludes zoning, sir.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, our next item, bear with me here, is the Parks Department. I'm going to turn that over to Mr. Steinberg.
Thank you. I know it's still on the agenda, but you do have my Parks monthly report for number 1.
Yeah,
Yes.
you'd already provided that in the mailboxes.
Yes, sir. Emailed it out.
All right, next item.
Item number 2 is just for discussion. As I got a chance to speak with you individually, Forever Lawn has indicated they would like to replace our indoor turf at full and at no cost to the township whatsoever. If you looked back at 2013 when we originally replaced, or excuse me, 2014 when we originally replaced this, the cost to replace the turf originally was $100,000. So if you take just those figures, I'm sure it's a little more just given inflation. We typically have put a banner up for a year in the facility for a sponsorship fee of $500. So my suggestion for discussion was going to be if anybody felt comfortable with us putting up a sign or a banner for Forever Lawn in the facility for the and what I would consider above and beyond service to the township with the new turf.
Well, as a starting point of discussion, one, I think what we've experienced here, I mean, the amount of research that we put into different field playing surfaces back almost 5 years ago before pulling the trigger, this absolutely shows we made the right decision in the vendor. I mean, they very easily could have pushed us towards a repair that, you know, yes, it would have been under warranty, but at the end of the day, they're willing to put new product in there to us at no expense. From my perspective, given it can be done during downtime to where it's not going to impact programming, I think that's important. But to your request of, you know, a banner or signage, personally, I would support that. I mean, signage is cheap, and the reality is the benefit that the township and the community are deriving from this at no additional cost. A banner is a gesture. That's a great business partner to me.
I would echo that. I think it just makes good business sense, quite honestly. You know, if they're to follow up on all of that and, you know, give us that kind of product back, I think it's just good business sense.
And I'd like to just maybe make a suggestion, if you don't mind, is that as opposed to a banner, which can be torn, waved, knocked down, maybe possibly some sort of more permanent sign. I guess when I was thinking of this, just to be very clear with what my thought process was, there is a sign below the scoreboard now, which was an original sponsor from even before my time, that doesn't even exist anymore. Maybe replacing that with a more permanent sign in that kind of a prominent area would make sense. And again, I'm not asking for decisions tonight, but just as a suggestion to chew on as we go through this.
Honestly, I don't think, no offense, this isn't rocket science. It doesn't require a whole lot of thought. I think we just replace it and do it. This doesn't need hours of pontification and forethought. If that's the recommendation, I would support it, and let's just get it done. No need to talk about it anymore. That's my opinion.
I agree.
Okay.
Copy.
Perfect.
Thank you, Sparks.
Thank you, Rob. We have nothing under the law director. It does take us to communications, and I'm going to turn that over to, should that be Lisa or Chuck?
I would have Chuck read this one. This is, I mean, they're always good, but wow, this is a good one.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. Yeah, we had received a thank you letter from a resident and said, Dear Chief Schallenberger, this past June of 2019, in the early morning hours, I called 911 for medical assistance for my husband. The response time was great. On both occasions, the paramedics needed to transport him to the emergency room. I was remiss in not writing a letter in June. However, I would like to thank your fire department and especially your EMT staff. On both occasions, I failed to get their name, but I'm sure you have it on record. Please know that they were extremely efficient, calm, and ever so helpful. They were patient and informative and reassuring. Plain Township is lucky to have a skilled professional staff. I look at this letter and it doesn't convey enough of thanks we are feeling. Again, thank you sincerely, Martha and Jim Gannon.
Awesome. Those are always nice to receive. And I think, as we've said, we're in the service delivery business. And if we're not delivering this top-notch service, we're not going to get the support for our levies. But given the overwhelming support we continuously have, safety services, roads, and so forth, this speaks volumes. We're doing the right thing.
Thank you. And actually, there was 2 different crews and a variety of ages, young and old personnel. So it's something that we're hopefully instilling in all our employees, the great service.
Fabulous. Okay. Nothing else under communications. It actually brings us to the portion of the meeting, public speaks. Do we have anybody from the general public that has joined us tonight via phone or Zoom that wishes to address the Board of Trustees? And if so, we would just ask that you state your name and address for the record. Okay, I think it's safe to assume that we don't have anybody that wishes to address the board here this evening. That will take us to the next section of the meeting, and that is concerns of trustees. And I've got two things here. I'm going to actually address them in reverse order. The first, I just want to put a reminder, Thursday, the Stark County Township Association is doing a webinar conference call with a representative from the Small Business Administration. Meeting notice had been sent out, I believe it was last week, regards to this. So should anybody be interested in attending, that will be a remote one. There's a number of at least our April and probably May meetings at the County Township Association level are being rescheduled to later dates. So got that. The first item that I had on here was Salvation Army. And I know we've seen a couple updates on this, but I'd be remiss just to honestly let it slide at the fact Salvation Army has presented an issue to the township over the last, I believe, almost 4+ years with illegal dumping, that being general public, or maybe it's a specific faction of the public that drops stuff off over there. We have had representatives from the Salvation Army into the township hall for meetings. I get at the end of the day, the mission and what they're doing goes to help quite a few people, but it also does not negate their responsibility and their obligation to the township and our surrounding residents to maintain and upkeep a clean, neat, and orderly site. I know since our last meeting or two, Tom's looked at call volume over there, what's documented and what's not, just as part of general patrols. And I believe we have probably expended too much time and resources over there. I mean, our staff's doing the right thing and doing it, but the reason we have expended those resources to the detriment of other areas of the township is because of the lack of regard, and as far as I'm concerned, as strong as this may be, a level of irresponsibility by the Salvation Army to uphold their end of the commitment, what they've previously committed to the township on the public record during our meetings, and that being in getting gating and blockades up, one, which they've come up with these real tiny little strands to loop across with a little sign that hangs from it saying no donations afterwards. And I will say, though, I drove by there today, given this quarantine thing, clearly a lot of folks are not out. I'm still bringing this up because I'm certain that once things get back to normal, we're going to continue to see issues over there. And the fact is Major Irvin, who Tom has attempted to work with and, inquire about the surveillance that they had previously committed to us and getting put up. Essentially, the major continues to dance around and provide excuses. And no offense, but for the sake of the public record, to Major Irvin and the Salvation Army, we're not playing around. We expect you to uphold your commitments that you've previously made on record to the Board of Trustees as well as to our public. And I just want to go on record as saying, should there so much as be another pile of that stuff over there, we need to be very aggressive in addressing it so this does not continue to go on for those poor folks that reside back behind there. So that's the only thing I had under concerns of trustees. Is there anything that either of my fellow trustees would like to add before we move on?
No, I think we've had this issue for a while. Is Lieutenant Carver still on?
Yes, I am.
What have we seen over there regarding access to that property with that pretty simple barricade that they put across the gate? Are people breaching that? I mean, is it locked in any way, or are people still going on that property after hours?
We still have a little bit of traffic after hours over there. It certainly has improved some. When they first closed down, before they put the ropes up, it was just a complete disaster over there. I think I sent you guys some pictures of just the massive piles of stuff. The ropes have helped some, and some of the after hours loitering has gone down a little bit. I think it just really is evidence that they need to have something long standing once they reopen, that would help resolve some of the ongoing issues, but it certainly could have a little more of a robust system to close that off after hours.
Yeah, I think that would be a deterrent. And unfortunately, we have two issues, if I recall. One is the dropping off. And then the other are the scavengers that come in both to the boxes and to the dumpster. Are we still having like scrappers going into the dumpsters and trying to get junk out of those as well?
We've not had as noticeable of an issue with that because they were primarily pulling back into that parking area.
Okay.
I'm sure there's probably still a couple of stragglers here and there that are walking back there. But with those ropes up and blocking that area, it's reduced the donations that are getting in.
Yeah.
So in turn, it's reduced the temptation for those people to come into those areas.
Okay.
Hey, John, to your point, again, I drove by there probably right around noon, 12:30 today to look, and I mean, it really is that skimpy little cable with,
Yeah.
looks like a laminated.
That's not going to do anything.
No, and what's absolutely frustrating is, no different than when we make commitments to the public and we have to live up to them. We have commitments made, whether it's businesses, and I don't care if it's private sector, public sector, nonprofit. When they do not hold up to their word, this level of lip service has got to stop. It's beyond frustrating. Hey, we don't have cable, or clearly they've got power there. They could put a surveillance camera or cameras up like they've previously committed to. And, here we are a couple years later, and now the major just seems hey, now we've got a new issue. No offense.
Frankly, it's ridiculous that a business owner would not take pride in maintaining his business and to allow it to look like that at all times. I just don't understand. Most people who are business owners want to take pride in their business. Obviously, he doesn't.
Well, I think the hard part is, from when you're on Whipple, you don't necessarily see it because of how it's tucked back behind. But for the residents who do live back there and the entrance into that, I think it's Tanny Brook, that's the first thing you see. And so whether you've got guests coming over, I wouldn't want to look at it. And it's just, I wasn't going to allow this to slide because I know I had asked Tom to follow with the major to even present a plan for tonight's meeting. And essentially he declined to attend, which just further is a smack in the face as far as I'm concerned. So if he's not going to take this serious, regardless of what else is going on, I just want, for the sake of the public record, that he sees if it continues, we're going to come hard and we're going to come consistently, because they're not going to continue to tie up township resources that our taxpayers are paying, whether it's through, the sheriff trying to monitor that. This is something that could be easily handled. So
I agree. And
And
with
I
the
will-
fact that he says the stuff that he does in his responses and the vague responses and the fact that he didn't show up tonight speaks a lot volumes about his character.
So I'm done with my rant, and I apologize for all of you that have had to listen. But when this thing draws on for so long, I just can't see there being any further acceptance.
We agree. It's unacceptable.
Okay. Nothing else under concerns of trustees. Let's see here. That will actually take us to, we don't have anything under approval of minutes. We do have a need for executive session. So I'm going to make a motion, be it hereby resolved by the Plain Township Board of Trustees, Stark County, Ohio, to adjourn to executive session at 6:51 p.m. from this regular meeting as authorized under Ohio Revised Code 121.22G for the purpose of the consideration of 1F, compensation of a public employee or official.
Second.
Second, discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Mr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Harless,
Yes.
Okay, and we will see everybody in executive session. Thank you. I'm going to make a motion that we return from executive session at 7:18 p.m.
Second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Mr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Harless,
Yes.
There are no announcements from executive session, so I am going to make a motion to adjourn from this regular meeting at 7:19.
I'll
Second.
second. Sorry, I was.
Rookle second.
Discussion, roll call.
Mr. Hawes,
Yes.
Mr. Sabo,
Yes.
Mrs. Harless,
Yes.